Welcome to Business Review, a daily program that delves into the latest and most significant economic stories, from stock markets to currency news. Business Review covers the most up-to-date developments in the global financial world.
The Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga said Japan will work together with all Apec members to build a sustainable economy and society. Suga made a speech via video link at the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC CEO Dialogues Malaysia 2020. He said the priority for his administration is to focus on green society and reform in the digital sector. Suga said COVID-19 pandemic this year posed challenges to the global supply chains, and Japan will work with other members of APEC to improve the situation. Suga also made a commitment that Japan will work together with APEC to build a sustainable economy and society. Under the theme APEC Reimagined, Priorities in the Aftermath of COVID-19, the APEC CEO Dialogues Malaysia 2020 is hosted by APEC Business Advisory Council, the ABAC, Malaysia, and it'll connect government and business leaders from across the 21 APEC member economies to discuss urgent issues facing the region and the world in the wake of the pandemic.
The number of Americans filing first-time claims for jobless benefits unexpectedly rose, likely as new business restrictions to control spiraling COVID-19 infections unleashed a fresh wave of layoffs, which could further slow the labor market recovery. The weekly unemployment claims report from the Labor Department, the most timely data on the economy's health, also showed at least 20.3 million people on unemployment benefits at the end of October, 7 months after the pandemic started. In the United States, millions will lose benefits next month when 2 government-funded programs expire. President-elect Joe Biden will inherit the public health crisis and a frail economy when he takes over from President Donald Trump on January 20th. Initial claims for state unemployment benefits increased 31,000 to a seasonally adjusted 742,000 for the week ended November 14th. Unadjusted claims rose 18,344 to 743,460 last week. Economists prefer the unadjusted number given earlier difficulties adjusting the claims data for seasonal fluctuations because of the economic shock caused by the pandemic, including a government-funded program for the self-employed, gig workers, and others who do not qualify for the regular state unemployment programs. 1.1 million people filed claims last week.
The head of the European Union executive said that the bloc must only lift restrictions for coronavirus slowly and gradually to avoid another wave of infections. Ursula von der Leyen spoke after the 27 national leaders discussed stepping up joint testing efforts in the bloc, doling out vaccines, and coordinating easing lockdowns as a second wave of the pandemic weighs on Europe. Europe has about 11.3 million confirmed COVID-19 cases, and nearly 280,000 people have died, according to data from the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control. The pandemic has also thrust the EU into its deepest recession. Von der Leyen also commented on the bloc's €1.8 trillion plan to recover from the recession caused by the pandemic, which has been vetoed by Poland and Hungary. Hungary and Poland blocked the EU's 2021 to 2027 budget and recovery plan because access to the funds would be conditional upon respecting the rule of law. Governments are desperate to get jointly borrowed EU money, the first ever attempt by the bloc to borrow and spend together to save businesses and jobs. While the 2 Eastern European countries refuse to support the financial plan with the rule of law condition, others, including the Netherlands and the European Parliament, refuse to accept it without it.
The Economist Intelligence Unit, a global business intelligence under the UK Economist Group, has released its latest report on worldwide cost of living survey after rating 133 global cities and comparing the price of a basket of 138 everyday items in each. Paris, Hong Kong and Zurich have jointly ranked as the world's most expensive cities since the COVID-19 outbreak, according to the research. The report also assessed the impact of the outbreak on living cost. Cities in Americas, Africa and Eastern Europe have seen their cost fall due to the depreciation of US dollars, but Western European cities have become more expensive as a result of the euro rise in value against US dollar. Among the most expensive cities, a kilo of bread this year costs an average of 6.1 US dollars in Paris, 5.03 US dollars in Zurich, and 3.82 US dollars in Hong Kong. Singapore and Osaka, which tied with Hong Kong in previous survey report in March, have slipped to 4th and 5th places in the cost of living since the epidemic. Furthermore, the pandemic has also influenced people's consumption habits. Working from home has boosted sales of laptops and desktops, with price being up 18.7% on average from the previous year. However, sales and prices of clothes and shoes are down because of less going out.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he was ending the era of cutting defence spending to better address a more perilous international situation that Britain has faced since the Cold War. The announcement of a major increase in military spending came despite the pandemic pummeling the economy and as Britain seeks to define its post-Brexit role on the world stage. In a speech to Parliament outlining first conclusions from a big review of foreign policy and defence, Johnson announced an extra £16.5 billion for the military over the next 4 years. The defence budget is now just under £42 billion a year. Johnson said the extra spending reflected the need to upgrade military capabilities with plans for a new Space Command and Artificial Intelligence Agency. He said the spending would also be used to restore Britain's position as the foremost naval power in Europe and cement Britain's position as the largest defence spender in Europe and second largest in NATO. The government did not set out where the money would come from at a time when the Finance Ministry has spent billions on trying to protect jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic. Britain's main opposition Labour Party said the increase was long overdue and the ruling Conservative government had cut the size of the armed forces by a quarter in the last decade.
Some of the relatives of victims of a fatal Boeing 737 MAX crash in Indonesia have slammed a decision by US aviation authorities to allow the jets to return to the skies, saying the move comes too soon. The US Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, lifted a flight ban on Boeing's 737 MAX imposed after two fatal crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia, killing 346 people within 5 months in 2018 and 2019. 2 years after the plane operated by Indonesia's Lion Air plunged into the Java Sea, killing all 189 on board, the tragedy is still raw. In the past, global air regulators promptly followed the guidance of the FAA, credited for decades with pioneering aviation safety, but many are now wary of seeming to toe the FAA line after the US agency was faulted for lax oversight. The Boeing Community Investment Fund's website said that the distribution of funds to provide philanthropic support to communities affected by the crashes would be completed by January 15th of 2021. in both accidents. A stall prevention system known as MCAS, triggered by faulty data from a single airflow sensor, repeatedly and forcefully shoved down the jet's nose as the pilot struggled to regain control. Adita Irawati, an Indonesian Transportation Ministry spokeswoman, said Indonesia would allow the Boeing 737 MAX to fly once the FAA issued airworthiness directives. Irawati added on-the-ground and simulated training for pilots would be included in that process, and the timing would be dependent on compliance with the requirements.
This has been Business Review, your daily source for the most critical financial stories. Tune in next time for the latest financial news impacting the world economy.